One. All right. What up, B?
What's going on, Nick? I love your haircut.
Thanks, man.
I really do.
It feels right. I've had
It
COVID
looks
hair.
right.
Not really even COVID hair, but I've had this long hair since last September. It was funny because this girl in Lisbon gave me my last haircut, and she just gave me my new one almost 9 months later. And
Wow, seriously. The same
yeah,
person.
same
Nice.
girl. Yeah, I wouldn't get it without her. Well, at least that's what I told her. But um, feeling fresh, man. How's quarantine in Hawaii?
Good. We're at day 11. So it's Tuesday, Thursday night. We're officially out of quarantine. We're gonna go for a celebratory swim or surf right down the street.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
So
I know.
how's the environment been in an apartment with your partner for 11 days?
Yeah, it's been honestly, it's like neither of us are going stir crazy. Like this
Hmm.
is the first time we're not. Also, both of us are not very indoorsy people, so
Mm.
like this is definitely an anomaly being indoors for this long. But yeah, we're not like it's honestly there's nothing really bad about it. We've just kind of gotten to a flow, and we've found ways to optimize quarantine. We
Mm.
found ways to create different routines and flows that work to really optimize quarantine. It's like, okay, we have to be inside for 14 days. How do we use this to our advantage? You
What have you
know,
been doing?
well, about 2 hours of Kundalini every morning. 2 hours of Kundalini followed by shipping out a video on our TikTok, um, followed by beautiful breakfast, followed by work because Cam has her big research project around surf protected areas. I'm
Yeah.
doing a few different things. So yeah, working. And then yeah, every meal is spent on this balcony overlooking the beautiful mountains,
Mm.
overlooking the valley, Manoa Valley over there. So yeah, and then at night we just get this nice ocean breeze and a lot of conversations. A lot of
Yeah.
like just riffing and conversations and supporting each other on projects and ideating and brainstorming and massaging. I'm dude. So I'm starting to make more of an effort to give Cam more massages because
Mm.
we had a conversation a few days ago about the average amount of massages that couples typically give each other. And
Mm.
I thought it was a lot less. I was like, honestly, if you took couples on average, I'd say I was gunning for like 2 to 4 times a year on
What?
on average. Whereas she felt more like it was an every day or every few days kind of thing. But I thought the average couple didn't really do couple massages. But I
Ah.
realized that massaging's just not a part of it's never been a part of my psyche. I haven't really
Mm.
gotten much exposure to it growing up.
Right. Yeah, we grew up in a very cold places, yo. You were in
Yeah.
Brooklyn, New York. I was in
Yeah.
Detroit. Distance is it's a thing. You're in your own space, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you a massager?
Oh, huge, man. My ex partner and I, we had a massage table in our apartment in Venice. We
Wow.
and we practice these on each other constantly. It's a combination of Reiki and always digging into each other. I pride myself on being a good massager. It doesn't take much, man.
Hmm.
Throw in a couple of YouTube videos, you learn that shit, and it just comes from a genuine curiosity. And dude, it's also something like active to do, right? As
For
someone who has
sure.
a
Yeah.
lot of energy, it's a lot of work, you
For
know?
sure. For sure. And I have given massages. Like,
Right.
but for me, it's always been a thing. It's always been like, oh, we're gonna
Something
dim the lights,
special.
we're gonna yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
for her, it's more of like a regular, frequent thing. So now
Yeah.
I'm shifting that mentality and getting and
Yeah.
integrating massages more, and understanding that it doesn't have to be this, oh, let's get the oil, let's dim the lights, let's throw on the fire tunes and like full body
Right.
massage every day. But
Right.
we can, yeah.
Dude,
So
even my friend Mina, who I just booked a flight. I'm gonna go.
Oh,
I'm gonna
yo,
go
I
visit
know
her.
Minna.
Oh, yeah, you
Yeah, of
introduced
course,
us.
dude. Minna and Noel. Yeah, I introduced
But
y'all.
yeah, I'm actually going to visit her in Sweden at the end of the month.
What?
Yeah,
Seriously? And Noel?
yeah.
What?
I don't know if we talk about this on the podcast, but no, not Noel.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. They ended up breaking up, but yeah, Minnie and I are very close friends now. I don't know if you knew that. Yeah.
I knew y'all were close, but I didn't
Damn.
know that. I didn't know that the friendship persisted in a close way over time.
You know, it's one of those interesting ones where you feel compelled to keep up. You
Right.
know, even
For
if it's in
sure.
a
I know
small
exactly what you're
way.
talking about.
You know, and like it's like one of those people who, if you don't even talk to him for a couple of months, you still feel comfortable reaching out. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Yeah. It's
That's exciting.
I almost wish we didn't drop names so we could be more
Yeah. Well, hey, we can set that boundary moving forward. Like, we just keep names anonymous. You know?
I think that's a good idea, generally speaking.
We just give aliases,
Right. Yeah.
Or just like, we just come up with any name, right?
Yeah. Is no NDAs, is that like stop when it comes to personal shit? I don't know, man. Like, is it radical transparency across the board?
I think for me, there's a difference between no NDAs for myself and no NDAs with other people's personal information.
Right. I agree.
And like, if this is something that's happening in her life, that's something personal and close to her, then I don't really feel, it's like, yeah, I'm no NDAs for myself, but I don't, if people tell me things as a personal, confiding, way or intimate way, then I'm not going to take that and de-intimate whatever the fuck that word is, but you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean,
I'm not gonna declassify it,
but it's even like, some of the information I feel compelled to share about our relationship, I feel like it could be helpful to other people, but I wouldn't want her to hear this from, or anybody else who knows her or knows to hear it from my mouth in this context.
For sure. Yeah, or like things that you haven't said to someone, you don't want the first reception of that to be through a podcast episode.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's generally a bad idea. So we gotta set that boundary. Just like I don't know how to do it. Maybe through message or something.
Dude, I love you, man.
I love you too, man. It's
like I just felt very compelled to just hop in with that just now, even though we say it a lot, but I don't know, just seeing you today, I just feel a lot of love and gratitude.
It goes both ways, man.
For my homie,
Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah.
I love when it comes to our shit. We don't gotta set no boundaries. And get fucking weird with it. Yeah, man. It's been an interesting, a very interesting last couple of days, especially.
You're in Berlin.
I'm in Berlin, and I'm here with this team of people I've been working with, like every day for the last couple of months, and I've never met in real life. And I don't know, man. It's just like it's been a perpetual state of gratitude, being surrounded by so many talented people who have really pushed me to be so much better, and we're building something really great together. And I feel healthy. Even last Saturday, the day before I left for Berlin from Lisbon, I was on a mushroom trip with a couple of my close friends.
Amazing.
And all I can tell you, man, is I've just been in this perpetual state of gratitude where, it really feels like my mind is being rewired. Like I've really dug in those grooves into my psyche of gratitude. Because I realized I haven't taken mushrooms since you and I did a couple of years ago.
Wow. After book club.
Yeah, after book club. last time I did it.
Wow.
And it was a very powerful reset that I feel like is persisting even to today.
Mm.
Um, it's been perfect, man. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. And it's also been interesting because I've been in such a state of love and health and mental and physical well-being. You know, I mean, and it feels like it's radiating to the point where people are just reaching out to me, saying like very similar things. And it's funny how when we put ourselves in a state of love, other people come with more love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is, it's all, I mean, there's a lot of magnetism, you
Yeah.
know, a lot of magnetism.
Mm.
And yeah, even I like can feel that even through the video chat, you know, I feel a radiance, you know, and
Yeah.
perhaps that's what compelled me to just jump in with the I love you. It was just
Yeah.
really just really sensing this openness and radiance.
I feel like I'm showing up and I'm ready to serve.
Yeah.
And it's been fascinating because even, you know, I mentioned, well, now I already said her name, Minna, you know, I was just like, yo, I'm coming to Sweden. I booked my
Yeah.
flight. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. You know, and it was like, yeah, cool, done. And even we have a mutual friend who reached out to me recently asking to reconnect, you know, and it's like that sort of radiance of self-love is having compound effects in relationships that I thought were in disarray. You know, it's like almost
Mm,
as if my frequency has been raised, people pick up on that and say, okay, now I'm ready to, you know, re-engage with this individual. And it's been
yeah.
across the board, yo. People who you know, I kind of felt like we are kind of in a lull or just reaching out in mass because I'm finally coming from a place where I'm fully full, not half
Yeah.
full. Like I'm
Yeah.
overjoyed in whatever comes my way. So it's interesting how we always talk about gratitude and the powerful compound effects and interest and things that can happen when you put yourself in the state of very high frequency and joy and what happens when you do that. And I feel as though like this last couple of days has been testament to that for myself personally.
That's beautiful. And you know what's also interesting about that? I've been feeling similarly. Like, and to
Mm,
Cam, I've described it a couple months ago as like feeling like I'm in this vortex, you know,
mm,
just like the amount of people that have been re-engaging and reaching out, and like the least expected like
mm,
people, you know, but it feels like there's this vortex happening where there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot coming in. There's a lot of like connection coming in from a lot of
yeah.
different angles. You know, that I
Mm,
like it does feel like a vortex, and every time I think it couldn't get more unexpected, like it does. It continues.
yeah. Like what is it that's happening at these higher levels that is leading to this?
I mean,
Is it, are we just noticing it more? Could it be
no,
that
this
is
is
it
is
yeah.
it COVID? Is it like COVID and people are just engaging more with others in a way, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Um, but
Hmm.
but I do believe that there is a lot to say for magnetism, you know, and actually when you are coming from a place of love and radiating that, right? We all have electromagnetic fields, right? And
Mm.
we're all magnetic, you know, it's all poles and poles.
Yeah.
But I mean, the distance part is interesting to me.
Mm.
You know, the physical part I more understand at a physical and metaphysical level in terms of magnetism and our divine magnetism. But when it's over distance, yeah, I think, what do you think? What does that bring up for you?
I feel like we just can't conceptualize distance properly, right?
For
You
sure.
kind of we're seeing everything from a three-dimensional plane, right? I mean, think of it like from the perspective of characters in a video game, right? How far is the distance from one character in a video game to another character?
Yeah,
How
we don't
far are
know.
they?
There's
Well,
just
from their
perception.
perspective, they're many meters away. They're many feet, they're worlds away, they're planets away, they're this, and this away. But the truth is, at a high level, we all know that just by changing up this variable, which is all in absolute, we can actually consolidate them all into these bytes. There's no
Mm,
distance. It's different
yeah.
expressions of distance that the characters in the game perceive as distance, when really it's all an expression of the same bytes, same code, right? That's running and giving this illusion of distance when everything is really the expression of one running chip on one computer, right?
Mm,
And I believe that at a high level, things operate very, very similarly. This perception of distance is nothing but an illusion. Everything is an expression of one expression of something, like that there remains to be determined, or like open to interpretation as to what that one thing is. But distance is an illusion, and I don't feel that there's any distance between us in any capacity when you sit down and really focus on it.
mm, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just
I
limited in our technology and our ability to tap into it today.
For sure.
Yeah.
And what do you think of this? Is, I guess piggybacking off of that, but also something that I was discussing yesterday. What are your thoughts on dreams, and what is dreaming to you, right? Because I think dreaming, that you do meet folks, that
Mm.
in very different ways, where distance in this physical objective reality, at least our perception of distance, no longer applies in those states, right? But what are your thoughts on dreams? How do you perceive dreams?
So, I'm a software engineer, so I love bringing things back to the computer metaphors, right?
Yeah.
I believe that your dream state, what's happening is that your mind is actively clearing cache.
Mm,
And what happened, pretty recent history is that what engineers got kind of smart, where they said, maybe we should stop getting rid of the cache, where you have this cache to clear the cache, right? There used to be something to do constantly, right? Now they offload everything to the RAM. The random access memory is now the cache. They basically use the substructure to basically leverage the cache and then offload that in a very productive way. I think that people can go through the same evolution, where in your dream state, it's a place to clear cache, where your brain is like dumping all the shit doesn't need to make room for the new stuff. And you can actually, through deliberate lucid dreaming and a constant tapping to meditation, turn it into your own personal RAM, where you can leverage dreams for certain things, right? Where the
mm,
dream state becomes an extension of the meditation, where your intention when you go to sleep can manifest itself into dreams, and you can actually practice doing things you're going to do in your waking day during the dream state, or tap into places which were maybe previously unavailable in a fully awakened or even awakened and meditative state.
mm. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I
And
think it can be both. It's not an absolute. It's something that, like, if it's a passive thing, it's the cache being cleared. It's very passive. And if it's an active thing, you can actually leverage it for serving you in a emotional, practice and spiritual capacity.
right, right. And do you think that dreams are, I guess, purely a neurological brain function?
No,
Or do you, okay.
no, I believe that there's much. I mean, here's the thing about the mind: it can't tell the difference between what is real and what is fake.
Yeah.
Period. If you
And
believe
what
something
is
to be a
real and what
threat,
is fake? You know?
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So if the mind believes something's to exist, it exists. And that happens very frequently in dream state, where you might have a certain dream and you'll see your heart rate spike if you're
Yeah,
tracking, right?
for sure.
It can't tell the difference. And, on one hand, you can be a victim of your dreams. And I also believe that you can be an active participant
Mm,
to leverage that dream state, because it's a different state, and you're turning off the rest of your senses, right?
for sure.
This is why sensory deprivation, I think, is such an important innovation in human consciousness, because you're deliberately entering into an awakened a dream state where all of your
Mm,
senses are turned off and you can tap into everything that's left over when you take away touch, smell, taste, sight, sound.
yeah.
What do you
Wow.
think dreams are?
Well, I'm open to what dreams are. Cam and I were talking about this. Well, Cam is my partner. For those who don't know, we are talking about this
Mhm.
Netflix Explained series, right? And they have one of the
Mm,
episodes on dreams, and they describe dreams from a purely physical perspective, like a purely neurological brain function, what's happening in your brain when you're dreaming.
mhm.
Whereas I've read, I remember when I was maybe 20, I read a book called The Finding of the Third Eye that takes a very different perspective on dreams. And,
Mm,
there are, according to this mystic who wrote the book, there are 7 different planes of existence,
mm.
right? So right now we're in the lowest plane, we're in the physical plane. And then you have the ethereal plane, you have the astral plane, goes up to 7. So
Whoa.
this astral plane is what she used to explain dreams, and that our dreams are actually our astral bodies. It's an interaction in the astral plane.
Mm.
Um, and then also for me personally with dreams, when I are you checking it out?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, keep going. I'm listening to you.
Is it
Yeah.
interesting?
Yeah, very.
Okay. Um, and with my own personal experience with dreams, like I remember coming out of ceremony, right? Coming out of very powerful ceremony, um, with the toad, right? And after that, the facilitator healer told me that I was gonna have some powerful dreams, like some really out
Mm,
there dreams. And
yeah.
surely I had some pretty out there dreams, right? And it's like,
Mm,
is that purely neurological? Because it really is. And even now, I am having very vivid, lucid dreams on a nightly basis where people from my life, this same magnetism that I'm describing in this physical plane, also seems to be playing out in the dream state.
right.
People are making appearances in very interesting ways that I haven't thought of or conceived of in a while. And let me give you one last example. The day that Kobe Bryant passed away in the helicopter, I was in, or when the helicopter crashed, I was in Bali, and I was sleeping when the helicopter crash actually happened. I was sleeping. My
Mm,
phone was on airplane mode. And this was the first time in my life that I have dreamt about Kobe Bryant.
mm.
This is the first time I had a dream about Kobe Bryant. I don't think about Kobe Bryant
Yeah.
generally.
Yeah.
He's not someone that frequents my psyche. So
Mm,
for me to have a dream of playing basketball and interacting with Kobe Bryant for the first time in my life, having a dream of Kobe Bryant, and then to wake up, to take my phone off airplane mode, and for the first message I see is my dad sending me an article about Kobe Bryant dying in a helicopter crash while I was sleeping,
mm.
makes me feel like that isn't simply a neurological interaction,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's there's a lot of interesting studies around hive minds,
Mm,
right? I mean, and a lot of this I've went deeply into it. It's really hard to substantiate and to replicate, but there's a lot of studies around these rats and mazes, how you can actually run rats through very complicated mazes in Europe, and they'll find once they run that maze, they'll do it like 3 times faster when running the same experiment in Washington D.C., right? Or like the way the ants move. Like, you ever seen an ant and you ever look at an ant on the ground and be like, man, this motherfucker's lost. He's not lost.
Yeah,
He's
not lost. Yeah.
they're tapped into that hive mind, right? They have a mission.
Mm,
They're very, very specifically built on that, and the colony operates as a whole, right? So you have these lower sentient beings who are all operating at this hive level, right? But we just have this huge ego, and we come to this conclusion: no, I'm an individual, I'm special, I'm this, I'm that, right? We are separate, not together.
yeah,
I don't believe that.
I don't. I think individuality is a construct.
Mm,
I don't think there's absolute individuality.
mm. What do you think? What would you describe it as?
Um, well, I think this is something I want to ask in November during my Akashic record reading.
Mm,
I want to ask about, we have individuality in this physical carnation,
mm,
right? Like you are a individual single physical instance. I am an individual single physical instance, but is that singularity, is that individualism only something that exists within this plane, within this physical objective like plane? Is it is it, I don't know. Or
I,
because
I think I feel like we are as separate as we believe ourselves to be.
right,
If you had a community of people who came together and believed they are together and think as one and can operate as one, they would operate as one,
for sure.
right? You can tap into and create these microcosms of shared consciousness. As we witnessed in Bali, right? You had these micro communities in the form of these bond jars that come together, and they all think and move as one. Communication is fluid among them, right? I mean, even as they meet up, they remove their names, right? I'm no longer Nicholas, I am now Neoman, right? It's the obfuscation of individuality that brings together these collectives in such a way that they can operate as a more closely knit unit.
Right,
I, and I believe we all have that ability. It's a matter of deliberately tapping into it and moving these egos out of the way, which are very, very deeply ingrained into our psyche.
for sure. And this concept of, yeah, I think ego is very ingrained. But ego, I believe to be inevitable to some degree. Like it's hard to, because I think ego is tied to identity, and I do think I've felt like there have been times in my life where, where I've been egoless, and particularly post ceremony, different ceremonies, like pretty egoless, but there is a build back of ego, right? And I think ego is kind of a necessary thing, but I do think this attachment to identity, is this attachment to individual identity. I think it does potentially more harm than good as a whole. Um,
Yeah, like
this attachment to, yeah, go for it.
yeah, it's not so much an inevitability as it is education.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember speaking to this one homie in the Outback in Oz, and he's from Poland, and someone messed up my name, right? Someone like said my name wrong, and they were saying my name wrong, and I didn't really like. I was like, oh, cool, like. And then someone asked, and I was like, yeah, it's Eli. And then, but I was like, you can call me whatever you want. Like, it doesn't actually matter. You can call me whatever. And then he jumps in and he's like, no, I disagree. He was like, your name really matters. Your name matters a lot. And I was like, we have different viewpoints on that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really feel like my name is me.
Mm.
My name is not me. That is a word that's been attached to my identity. you know what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I actually have a personal story in that really resonated with me earlier this week. This amazing guy I work with, his name's Kieran. He's our head of data science at Your Super. He has this beautiful tradition. His wife is Native American. and he's African American. And their family, they have a tradition of he's having a son next week. We're supposed to have a son next week. He's taking
Wow.
paternity leave, second kid.
Wow.
They have a tradition where I asked him on our team call, I was like, yeah, so what's the name? He's like, my wife and I have the name, but we don't utter the name till the child's brought into the world, and they're the first one to hear it from us, the parents. The family tradition. They don't share the name with anybody. So the child is the first one to hear the name.
Wow.
But when the child's brought into the world, like it almost feels, I think it's a beautiful tradition. I think it's very powerful, right? It's a deeply intimate thing where the parents are handing down the name to the child. I think it's a wonderful tradition. And one, I was even thinking, I was like, maybe I'll replicate that in my kids. Should I ever be blessed enough to have them? But, is that the introduction to the ego, right?
Yeah.
Is that the first instantiation of individuality, right? You have a wide-eyed child. Is it taught? I mean, what if the child didn't have a name, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It would then. Here's the thing. Then it would be hard to address that person in conversation, or
Would
in
it?
a or in.
How would we do it? I mean, imagine if we
Yeah.
got rid
Yeah.
of names, like
Yeah.
what would we do?
What would your contact list in your phone look like?
I don't know. Maybe you wouldn't have one, man. Maybe it would just be all represented by like bubbles in a circle, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And see, so my stance on labels in general, I think that their use case is in classification. I think there's a strong use case in being able to classify things and being able to speak to certain points,
Yeah.
right? Like, for example, race, right? Race is a social construct. Skin color is not a social construct, right? To say that someone is a black person and to say that someone is a white person, it's like if you lined up 10 people, 9 of them are white, 1 of them is black. How would you identify, like, how would you point that person out to me? What's the most obvious difference, right? And I think like I do see a use case of identity labels in terms of classification, in terms of actually being able to and also to draw insights, right? To be able to say, oh, we know that this demographic of people, or or women, or whatever, let's say women, for example, as a demographic of people, have X, Y, like we found in some scientific study that there's X, Y, and Z percentage of blah, blah, blah. Like, it allows you to classify, in a way, and actually obtain knowledge in a way. But I think being attached to labels, I think, is where, and feeling like there are expectations that come along with these labels, I think is expectations from yourself and from the outer world, I think is where this labeling kind of crosses that line of utility, or crosses the line of positive utility.
Yeah. It's so hard to draw lines because we use all these identification labels and classifications so we can share ideas, right? Everything has a word because it's a prompt for a conversation. I mean, I speak these words to you, it's like all these fucking throat vibrations, right?
Yeah. And I know what they mean.
Right. Your mind is actively taking in that information, creating this beautiful neural net of all these different previously unconnected nodes to put these things together, classify, and be on the same page as somebody else. Right. But it's all the unspoken things. When I say someone is black, someone is a woman, someone is this, and this, that's where things get really strange. Right. It's all the connotations. And then like you can mention something and like, yo, is this person thinking the same thing I am? Right? It's the things that are unsaid is where things get squirrely, right?
Yeah.
Or things that are said, which may be disagreeable to somebody else who may not necessarily agree with them, right? It's the words behind the words,
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. It's something, it's very interesting how we do that. It's like, where do you draw that line? Because if a word has very triggering, there's something behind it worth discussing and worth diving into, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, and it feels like it's becoming much harder to have these conversations in general with
Mm.
people when it comes to certain subjects. There's now a lot of taboo, right?
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of political correctness that needs to be adhered to.
Right.
And then if you don't adhere to that, it's like, you know, but
Right.
it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
is that it? But then is that putting up more barriers to having these important conversations,
I think
right?
so.
Because now people feel like they're tiptoeing around instead of just being able to, you know, I don't know, right?
Just have the conversation. But the truth is,
Yeah,
like, bringing up these things even is very heavy for people. It triggers them,
yeah, for
and
sure.
everything in the world is leaning towards um, agreeance, right?
Mm,
And making
mm.
everybody comfortable, no matter who you are. Let's drop the hard conversations and let's just all be happy and everyone love every. We know everyone doesn't love everybody. We know there's problems in the room. There's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
there's not an elephant. It's fucking Genghis Khan's elephant army, and there's hundreds of thousands of them, right? But let's not
yeah,
talk about that. Let's sweep it all under the rug and let's move on and talk about the fucking weather, right?
yeah, yeah,
Meanwhile, people are hurting inside, right? And what's interesting is that the people who want to talk, some case, I shouldn't never generalize because you're always wrong if you fucking generalize, but
for sure.
some people who are the most compelled to have these conversations and want to dive the most deeply into them are the ones who are putting up the same barriers, saying you can't say that because you don't come from where I come from,
Yeah,
right? You don't know what it's like, and it's something where well, it's like, well, I want to feel heard and educated,
for
right?
sure,
I want
for
you to feel
sure.
heard, and I feel compelled to give you the space to educate me as to how you're feeling, and I want to be able to hold space for you comfortably.
For sure, 100%.
Yeah,
Um, and I think that's a healthy way to address the mass amount of elephants in the room that need to be addressed. Because I think we do have this tendency to sweep things under rugs. Like that seems to be that seems to be like a thing that we just all
it's a
do as
strategy.
a yeah, it's
Poor strategy. you
yeah,
know,
it's the worst strategy.
I would agree.
It's the worst strategy, instead of like, how do we actually address these things? And also, me not feeling like you need to be entirely politically correct when you step to me and want to have this conversation, because I do understand that we have different experiences and different perspectives,
Right.
and I'm open to that, and that's how the conversations perhaps have to happen, you
Well,
know?
I'll give you a great example of this. You're super. We just introduced something called Moon Balance Day, where women every month can take a day off because they have their lady time.
Yeah.
Okay. Yo, this little tweak in our company policy has sparked tens of conversations around, and I've learned so much about the struggles that every woman that above the age of 14 is actively going through for the majority of their life, right? I've never heard any of these things. I've never
Mm.
heard of the horrors of waking up for anywhere between 3 to 9 days a month and feeling like your insides are on fire, and there's just blood everywhere and you feel emotion and like all these like crazy variables and factors that are introduced into your daily, into your monthly life, right? Never
Yeah.
had a conversation up until this simple tweak where, hey, now it's not only accepted, it's addressed, and we have a platform to speak about it. It's been such a learning experience for me and the other men in the company to learn about all the struggles of our coworkers and the things that they go through. I've never had this crash course in this, despite every woman I know in my life ever having experienced this on a regular basis, yo.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's powerful.
Extremely. And I feel like for such a long time, it's went completely unaddressed because that's the way everyone was the most comfortable,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure. And it's like perhaps people never thought to act, never comes up, right? It seems like a taboo thing to talk about, right?
Yeah,
When it's
totally.
actually the most natural human thing possible.
Yeah. It's like you have these people sitting next to you every single day at work, or used to, metaphorically sitting next to you now, who are going through hell, and
Hmm.
it was never appropriate to speak about it. And they'd be the first one not to talk about it. They'd be the first one to say, "Oh, I don't want to talk about that. Like, I don't want to feel weak. I don't want to feel vulnerable. I don't want to feel all these different array of emotions because I don't want to look foolish." But just a simple nudge of, hey, it's not only okay, but it's something that we've
Encouraged.
encouraged. And we have a company policy that's actively addressing it,
Mm,
right? It's genuinely shocking to me that every company on planet Earth isn't doing this.
yeah, yeah. I think
Yeah.
we need to, I mean, in workplaces and just social settings in general, push ourselves to encourage vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because I think vulnerability gets such a bad rap in general, because people think vulnerability means weak, right? That's what
Mm.
people think, right? But vulnerability actually means the opposite. It actually means courage, right? It actually means confidence. It actually means like I am open, right? I am opening myself up in a courageous way. And I
Yeah.
think, and interestingly enough, I was reading a bunch of different studies on this for the loneliness stuff, but there's this thing called when you don't make yourself vulnerable or don't come from a place of vulnerability, people don't trust you.
Mm.
You come off as ingenuine, and people
Mm.
can subconsciously pick up on a barrier, right?
Mm.
Whereas if you do come from a place of vulnerability and courageously open, people it actually has a much more positive impact in other people's perception and comfort and trust with you than you would think,
Right.
because we view vulnerability as this thing,
Mm.
as this negative thing in this wrong light.
Mm. People see vulnerability as dimming your light and, bowing your head. It's not the case. What you're doing is you're creating space for other people's light.
Yeah.
Like when I come to you and say, "Hey, I'm very arrogant to the way you've lived your life, to what you're going through, and I'm here to learn," it creates space for healing. And, all trauma healed is medicine, right? And the more vulnerable that you can show up, you create space for other people to find the courage themselves to be forthcoming with what they're feeling, and that creates medicine for the world.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, I think it's, especially as men, it's very important that we're constantly providing space for
Yeah.
those around us to be vulnerable, and be vulnerable ourselves.
Be vulnerable ourselves, because
Mm.
that's something that, especially with men, right? Especially with cis, like heterosexual men, it's like this feeling of, this view that masculinity is not being vulnerable,
Mm.
which
Tough
is
guy.
completely flawed and completely wrong and entirely wrong, right? And
Yeah.
also there's such a flawed view that we are we are masculine beings.
Mm.
That in itself is a flawed view. Sure, we
Mm.
have a we we can have a masculine core, but all of us are beautiful hybrids of the divine masculine and feminine, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think especially with men, we need to really embrace and practice vulnerability. And I think that's something that is never, at least when we were growing up, right? It's not
No.
something that you see in all the media around you, what gets reinforced by friends around you, right? there's never any, who we have to teach this. We have to integrate this,
Right.
you know?
It comes down to education. I mean, what happened when you were a kid and you fell down and started crying? What'd your dad tell you?
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Get
rub some
up.
dirt on it.
Yeah,
Get the fuck up.
yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah,
Don't be a little bitch, right? Stop
yeah,
being a pussy, right?
yeah,
Don't be a girl, right? It's like
yeah,
you create this feeling where, we're trained at a very young age to not, for lack of a better term, don't be pussy, right? And you start to associate crying in all these places of vulnerability with being a pussy that you're
yeah,
taught as a young man at a very young age from the very beginning not to do,
for
right?
sure.
Don't
And,
cry. All these rules that have been put on us and that were ingrained in us at a very young age.
and even this term that, that we've normalized, especially growing up, right? Of like being called pussy. And like that
Right.
being that's the descriptor we use, right? And
Right.
then
Right.
b that is a bad thing, like, oh, if you're not tough, if you're a pussy, right? But it's like the first flaw with that is the fact that we're that like youth is using that word in such a way, right? Because think about what that means, right? Think
Right.
about like what that's actually saying subconsciously,
Mm-hmm.
right?
It's an object you don't want to be.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, yeah. um which is, yeah, which that needs to, yeah, there's so much that needs to be integrated at these early childhood levels of education. and
Even
and
even that word, now that I think about it, I feel at some point will go the same way as the word faggot did.
we
Right?
need to eradicate it.
We need to eradicate it just like we did the word faggot. It's got
Yeah,
to go out. It's got to go out the window. It's got to be as shocking and as appalling as when someone calls someone else a faggot now, as we did as kids,
yeah,
right? And that's the
yeah,
truth of the world we live in. And the other interesting part of this is, what is the opposite of being a soft pussy? It's being a very tough, very like alpha male who fucks bitches, right? Like
yeah,
somebody who is so much not a pussy, they have no vulnerability and have just the tough guy that can kick anyone's ass and overcome from an alpha standpoint anything that
for
they
sure,
choose. That's what
for
we're taught.
sure, for sure. And I was thinking about this the other day,
Mm,
just how, just that the phrase "fucking bitches"
right,
and how that's been used in so many hip hop songs and
right,
so like normalized as like a phrase of
right.
like fucking bitches, like you are fucking bitches. Okay, so that, that's, there's so many things wrong
Let's
with
break it
that.
down. Yeah, let's break that down.
There's so many things wrong with that.
Right.
Like, first
You
of all, I think we need to eradicate the like addressing of women as bitches,
right.
period,
Period.
period, you know um because I think the context that that's taken on, I think that's something that we really need to think critically about, right? Of like addressing women as bitches in any capacity,
Mhm.
right? And then this term of fucking bitches is like, okay, now you add a whole other layer on that, and this term fucking is like, it's so it's it really strips sex from its powerful, intimate, energetic exchange.
Right.
It really strips it down to this really cold fucking
Yeah.
of a bitch. And that's
Right.
like, that is something that is so wrong on so many levels, you know?
Right. It completely objectifies your partner, and it removes all the vulnerability, all intimacy, all just recognizing what is happening and taking place. This dangerous, dangerous positioning of having sex with somebody.
Yeah.
And that's something that's
Yeah.
propagated throughout every culture, you know, like rap music and all these media symbols have become internationalized. It's now a global pandemic of people who feel that this is the, you know, the seventh level of male evolution, right?
Right.
Just fucking
Yeah.
bitches getting money, right?
Right. And that's glorified, right? That
Right,
like like it's 2020 and we're still saying that. Like
right,
that's still like, and then you think of, dude, I think about when I was growing up and the shit that we listened to,
yeah.
the music that we listened to,
That we still listen to,
especially
not
that
we,
we,
but
yeah,
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 yeah, but like that's still being listened to. And think about like when I was younger and especially in middle school, and like it's like hip hop and rap, and that's what you were listening to. That's also what was playing at parties, right? That's also what, so this is what people are. And then also when you think about it, it's like, yeah, well, that's what you're taking in, and you're taking that in from these people that, you know, to a certain degree you see as some sort of role model, right?
mm,
Or see as someone successful, right?
yeah,
Or see as someone, and it's like that's what's being glorified and that's what's being talked about, is this concept of, oh yeah, I'm fucking bitches, I'm getting money. And it's like, okay,
right,
really? Like it's that shallow? Like
yeah.
life's that shallow and that like unmeaningful and that objective? We're really, you like, that's really,
Well, it's also you combine that with the lack of male mentorship, the lack of
for sure.
formal integration into adulthood as boys transition to men, right? There's a serious lack of male role models in many of these communities.
100%.
So we don't have a choice as kids but to look up to the role models that you'll find on MTV, the role models
100%.
that you find on YouTube, right? We trust our friends' opinions over that of the OGs who, you know, and who've even been brainwashed themselves, right? I do believe that there's a it's really hard to be arrogant nowadays, to be
Mm,
naive, because we have access to so much more information. But the question is, are these role models and all this information being disseminated to kids like you and I in these communities, right? There's a lot of
yeah.
Chaldean kids, a lot of black kids running around in the places that we grew up who are being exposed to the same music and the same modes of thinking that have held back our collective communities for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Yes.
So I think it is up to us, you know, as people who have, you
Us.
know, to really bring that information back, right?
Yeah, and pay it forward.
And pay it forward. I think this is a step in the right direction to do so.
Yeah,
Talk
because there
talk
is a
about these
lack,
things openly.
for
Yeah.
sure. There's 100% a lack of mentorship. You know, there's a lack of, you know, like if I think about being younger and, you know, in terms of people on television or on the radio that looked like me,
Mm.
that were familiar to me, that culturally like felt familiar and looked like me, a lot of them, to be honest, were like rappers, singers, or basketball players, you
Mm.
know. And it's like, well, what are the messages that were coming from the rap? And honestly, growing up those days is not very good, you know. It's
Mm.
not like, it's not very good. But then again, I think the fact that people, that like rappers and these people are saying these things, you know, myself included, when I was younger and dove into rap and we're making music, it's like that's what you think music is, right? That's what you think hip hop is. But I think
Right.
I think the fact that these things are said in music also speaks to the point, this very point, you know, like, of, sure, there can also be a level of empathy with the people that are saying these lyrics, because that
Mm.
comes from a certain place as well. That comes from, you know, that speaks to the point of, you know, like this exact point
Mhm.
of not gaining that awareness, or that, you know, that that presence of mind to really see these things holistically. So then it's just a cycle, right? Because then it goes from me to you, and then you come up, and then it goes back down, and then you come up, and then it goes back down,
Yeah.
right? But people need to break the cycle, and it needs to be broken at these formative years, because it's toxic, dude. It's toxic, bro.
It's toxic,
It's toxic.
and it's normalized.
Yes,
Normalized toxicity is dangerous,
for sure.
right?
For sure.
And but it's so hard to know when you're like a kid in these scenarios. Now it's easier, right? Like everything's being censored at a very high level, right? And you're not as susceptible to your immediate environment as we used to be, right? You grew up in the small Chaldean culture. I didn't fucking like any. I mean, I just had nothing to do with it. I still don't have anything to do with it. Being perfectly honest, but you didn't have the internet. You didn't have a cell phone in your pocket, right? So you were a product of your surroundings, right? Now we have a lot more opportunities to educate our children in interesting ways. Like even this whole movement away from these school systems where you go to school and you're rolling the dice every time you send a kid there, right? With shitty teachers and very strange kids who have certain ideas in a collective community. Now it's like, okay, they're online. They can take online courses from anybody and learn the best there is in the world from the best people
For
in the world.
sure.
That gives me hope. I
Yeah.
believe that through, you can say a lot what you want about like these schools going away. I think for me, at least in the public school system, had I been exposed at the global level that kids now have to be by matter of requirement and circumstance, I think it's a generally good thing that they are being, rather
I
than
agree.
at a micro level in their immediate communities, right? But it's just it's an interesting new paradigm where, right, do they go like which way do they go? They go towards the light or they go towards some other places, because you know how the internet can go.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And it is, I mean, a lot of this stuff is very systemic. Is very systemic.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. That exposure, and I think there is a responsibility on folks like ourselves to really be advocates, to really be mentors, to really be, stewards. There's a responsibility on us to really be stewards, because it has to come from us. It
Yeah.
has to. Who else is it going to come from? Who else is going to get it? Has to.
The truth is the information will come through no matter what. Will it be a positive message and one that is forward thinking and integrated, or will be one that has an agenda?
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
And the fact is, a lot of the stuff that's trying to vying for your attention, in a lot of ways, they tend to have agendas, right? And the truth is, a lot of stuff that gets attention is also very polarizing. So it's a matter of, that's why you gotta. Fortunately, these kids, these parents, which is really hard to do, monitoring where their kids go on the internet, they have an opportunity to expose themselves to some of the most interesting, informative information ever available in any part of human history, as well as all the old stuff and all the new, to inform who they are. And I just really hope that these kids and these next generations are leaning into something worth listening to.
For sure.
That's disseminating the information that brings them into the light and doesn't continue to propagate some of these different ideas that those normalized toxicities that we've been forced to grow up through.
100%.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's a good place to end this thing on, man.
I think yeah.
It's been a good chat. Been real, everyone. Stay safe. Stay love. Yeah. Keep it real, guys.